Well, thank you for sharing that. What happened last week is tremendous. It was right along with what we'll be talking about this morning. I just want to mention that the comments that I make here this morning are not going to be related to the sermon title. I assured Caleb that I was not preaching the same sermon he preached last week. It's not chasing the lion, it's living sacrifices to God. And I was thinking, I was trying to find a story to open this up. I couldn't find it. The best thing I could find was a story about it was about a pig and a chicken that was and they came across this sign on a store that said, "Desperately in need of eggs and bacon." And the chicken turns to the pig and says, "Well, I'll donate the eggs if you donate the bacon." And the pig says, "No." He says, "Why not?" And the pig stares at the chicken and says, "Well, for you, it's a contribution. For me, it's my life." And so we're talking about a living sacrifice, not a contribution, but a complete dedication of our lives. Before we look at what it means to be a living sacrifice, I'd like to ask a question. It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it. But how do you stand before God? Do you know where you stand with God? Are you good with God? And if you believe that you're good with God, on what basis do you believe that you're good with God? There are some who think they're good with God because they see themselves as basically good people. They don't steal, they don't never killed anyone, who committed adultery. They live pretty decent lives. Don't feel a need to repent because they've never done anything bad. Others might think that they're good with God because they finally got their act together. They recognize that they have fallen short, but they repented. They're okay now. What did Jesus have to say on this? Before we look at Romans 12, let's turn to Matthew chapter 20. And here Jesus tells a story that illustrates the grace of God. He tells this story in connection with another story. It's the story of a rich young ruler. You remember the story. The rich young ruler comes and asks Jesus, "What good thing must I do to inherit eternal life?" And what did Jesus tell him? Sell what you have and give it to the poor. And the rich young ruler did what? He responds. It says he turned away sorrowfully because he had what? Many riches. He was a very wealthy man. And Jesus, as the man was walking away, turned to his disciples and said, "Truly I tell you, it's hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it's easier for the camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven." And he was clearly making this clear that it's virtually impossible. And that's how the disciples took it. And Peter noticed what Jesus said because it was sounding like that Jesus said, if you want to be saved, you've got to go and do these things. Peter's looking at himself and saying, wow, that's exactly what we've done. It says to chapter 19, verse 27, Peter answers Jesus saying, we have left everything to follow. What then will there be in this for us? And Jesus didn't correct Peter. In fact, he reinforces Peter. Verses 28 and 29. At least at the beginning he does. He says, truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. Jesus says, all those who give up everything to follow him will be rewarded. But what does it mean to give up everything? Is he talking about material goods? Or is he talking about something more? Verse 30, Jesus warns us that we're not to simply follow him because we want the reward. Verse 30, but many who are first will be last. Many who are last will be first. He then tells a story to illustrate what he means. The story is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm going to read it with very little commentary. Starting with verse 1, Matthew 20. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About 9 o'clock in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, you also go and work my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right. So they went. Notice they didn't even ask if they were going to get paid, right? I'll give you what was right. And they went. He went again about noon and about 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, why have you been standing here all day doing nothing? Because no one has hired us, the answer. He said that you also go and work in my vineyard. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first. The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received what? A denarius basically was a day's wages. So just figure out what a day's wage is, that's what they got. They worked what? 5 o'clock and sun went down, 7, 8. They worked 2 or 3 hours. They got a full day's wages. And I can imagine the ones that came first are thinking, wow, they got denarius. Really good. Right? What happened? When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. This one. So when they came and were hired first, they expected to receive, let's get verse 10. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them received a denarius. And when they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. These who are hired last worked only, I said 12 hours. What does the scripture say? They worked what? 1 hour. They said, you've made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. He answered one of them, I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take the pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Do I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. There's an important lesson in this story for each one of us. Jesus told this story in response to Peter. And he acknowledged, yes, Peter, you're going to be rewarded. But then he tells this story. And I believe there's also a warning for each one of us who serve God. The disciples were not to think that because they were the first ones to follow him, that they were better than those that would come later. And it's a warning to us. It could be tempting to think that, we've been in the church for many years. We've done all of these services. That we deserve a special place. Jesus is saying that we are all equal. We're all serving for the same reason. And if we're doing this for the reward, we're going to be disappointed. Because Christian growth is not about how long you've been doing what you've been doing. It's about maturity. Let me give you a couple of stories to illustrate this. A teacher had been teaching for 25 years. There came an opening in her school that would allow her to advance, get promotion. She would get more money. And so she applied for the job. Another lady applied for the same position. She had been teaching for 1 year. She was a rookie. And the woman who had taught for only 1 year got the job. The woman with 25 years of experience was livid. She said, this isn't fair. For 25 years, I have taught our children. I had the experience, I had the seniority, I have paid my dues, and I give this to someone who's been teaching for 1 year. So she went to the principal and knocked on his door. And I think he was expecting her. She came in and she said, I want you to know why, I want to know why after 25 years you gave this job to a woman who's been teaching for only 1 year. And this is what the principal had to say. He said, I'm sorry, you don't have 25 years of experience as you claim. You have 1 year of experience for 25 years of work. 1 year of experience for 25 years. Is it possible that the same could be true in our spiritual lives? Are we as mature as we think we are? Is it possible for us to have been Christians for many years and not have the experience to go along with that? The answer is yes. And let me give you an example. Ethel Barrett tells the story of Dwight L. Moody. He was one of the greatest evangelists that ever lived. She says, when Moody was converted, a tremendous hunger for the Bible came over him. He was so engrossed with the Bible that he was willing to do anything that it said. And he was so quick to obey what the Bible was saying that he became a menace to some of the believers. His rapid spiritual growth was an embarrassment to certain people who, though they had been Christians for many years, had never grown up in the Lord. Week after week, Moody would come to church with a new experience, and he wanted to share what Jesus had been doing in his life. And this was too much for some of the members. They couldn't stand it. They couldn't stand his exemplary life. And so they went to Moody's uncle and they said, "Would you please tell your nephew to be quiet?" Here's Ethel Barrett's conclusion to the whole matter. His robust spiritual health and bounding energy disturbed their napping. He was growing in the Lord while they were spiritually asleep. She goes on and said, he was too much for them. So while they were sleeping, he was growing. And he continued to grow until he left them far behind. He grew more than a few years that they had done in 30 or 40 years. And what about us? Are we growing? Are we developing? Are we maturing in our experience? It's been said that if we're not growing, we're dying, decaying. The Bible tells us to grow in what? In grace. And in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm not talking about works here, but I am talking about when we understand what Christ has done for us and that we have been saved by His grace. It should result in a transformation of our experience. The Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 12 tells us just this. Now, let me remind you, in the first few chapters of Romans, Paul makes it clear that how many of us are sinners. Every single one of us. And he says we're all equally sinners, saved equally by the grace of God. Now, that grace needs to do something in our experience. It doesn't give us a license to continue to do just like we were doing before we were saved. It transforms our life. And in what way does it transform us? Well, take a look at what Paul says in Romans 12. You look at Romans 12 through the end of the book of Romans. And it's quite a high standard he raises for us. Romans 12, verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a what? Living sacrifice. Living sacrifice. In other words, we are to give ourselves entirely to God and to His will. This is holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Worship is not about just coming to church and listening to a sermon, singing some hymns. It's about giving ourselves to God. For God to do what He wants to do with us. That is when we worship God. It's only then that we are truly worshiping. Verse 2 says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We are to think differently. Then you who are able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. What does this life look like? I'm going to just give a few examples in the last few chapters of Romans. Verse 3 says, by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. So it begins there. All right, remember Peter's first question. We gave all of this stuff. What are we going to get, right? So who is he thinking about? He was thinking about himself. What he was going to get out. Paul was telling us, when you're converted, I'm not going to be thinking about what I'm going to get out of this. But rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. Look at verse 9. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another how? Above yourself. So a better question for Peter to have asked was, he said, what will I get out of this? Is what will my fellow disciples get out of this? What will the people that I bring to you, what will they get out of this? It's not what am I going to get out of this. And then, verse 14 to 18, the standard gets even higher yet. He says, bless those who do what to you? Think about that, right? Somebody treats you poorly. Paul tells us that we're to bless them. Do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of how many? Wow. That's quite a standard, isn't it? Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, we recognize this is not always very possible, but if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Let's remember that over this next year as we get into an election season. Right? Right? You know, it gets pretty ugly. In fact, speaking of election season, we have Romans chapter 13. Right? He says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except that which God has established. Now, what government is Paul talking about here? He's writing this to who? It's the title of the book. He's writing this to the Romans. Who's in charge in Rome? Was it a Christian? It was a pagan government. And he's saying that they are there by the authority of who? God. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against who? What does it say? They are rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. Now, please, don't misunderstand. There is a time for civil disobedience. But how we go about it matters. It matters. It is the spirit that we go about this. There is a time for disobedience. If the government tells us to do something that is against God's law, Who do we obey? But we need to make sure that that's an explicit command from God. It's not just because I don't like this law, I don't want to obey it. If I disobey a law that's not contrary to God's law, guess who I'm disobeying? God. So maybe think twice about speaking, right? Think about it. Think about it. Now, I'm not talking about doing these things in order to be saved. We are saved by grace. But now God calls us to a higher standard. We're not to see just how can we barely squeak into the kingdom of heaven. God wants us to live our life in such a way that no one can point their finger and say, I don't want anything about to do with that person's God. This is about bringing people to Jesus, and how we live matters. People are watching us, whether we like it or not. We need to take care of our relationship with God. How does God want us to live our life? Because this world operates on a simple principle. It's the principle of self-rule. And you can see it in government. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. This is the way I see it, and I'm going to fight for it. But the Christian experience is different. It's built upon, this is something the world hates. It's built upon submission. Submission. Verse 6, this is also why we pay our taxes. We don't pay them because it's the law. We pay them because God tells us to. For the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. Let no debt remain outstanding. Think about that. Now, the laws of the land allow us to file bankruptcy. But remember, as Christians, we're thinking of the effect that our behavior has on others. Do unto others as you would want. Would you want somebody that owes you to leave you empty-handed? This isn't about what the law says. This is about what our responsibility is as Christians. And it's not for earning our salvation. It's as representatives of Jesus in caring for others. Let no debt remain outstanding except there is one. There is one debt that we can leave outstanding. And what is that? The continuing debt to what? To love one another. In other words, you can never love someone so much and say, okay, I paid it. Right? Instead, it calls us to live higher. So I'm not trying to put anyone on a guilt trip. What I'm saying is that we can never get to the point where I'm living the Christian life and it's good enough. And at the same time, I'm not saying that I have to get better so I can be acceptable to Christ. I'm already acceptable to Christ. But now I'm working not for my salvation, but for the salvation of others. And how I live my life makes a difference. Whoever loves others, Paul says, has fulfilled the law. The commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be are summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does not harm, does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. And do this understanding the present time. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here, so let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave decently, as in the daytime, not in carousing or drunkenness, sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ. Put your clothes on this morning. You came to church, where'd your clothes go? They came with you, right? Right? So Paul is saying, just as our clothes go wherever we are to clothe ourselves with Jesus so that everywhere we go, guess who's there? So when you go door to door, guess who's there? Jesus. When you go to the nursing home, Jesus is there. Right? When you go to work, it's not like, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian here and then I go to work. We are still have Christ clothed with us everywhere we go, 24/7. Clothe yourselves with Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. This is a living sacrifice. Here is the sacrifice. Even though we've been saved by grace and we're seeking to live the Christian life, guess what our nature still is? It still wants what it wants. That's why it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice. It's a struggle. And every morning we need to submit ourselves to God. That's why it's required for us to submit. Chapter 14. I'm not going to go into the whole chapter. We don't have time to do that. This is an important one too, especially as with what I've shared with you this morning. This is going to be tempting to start looking around. Is this person really doing that? Please take this for yourself. Don't look at anyone else. Even though I'm looking at all of you, I want to apply this to me, not you. Right? As Paul says in chapter 14, verse 1, accept the one whose faith is weak, without quarreling over disputable matters. It's amazing the things that we argue about. And in the bigger scope of things, it doesn't really matter. Now, he goes on, I'm not going to go into what he means by vegetables and meat, days of the week, because the main point in this passage is judgment. In verse 13, he says, therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. So the issue is not even, is this something that's acceptable for me to do? The issue is, what effect is this going to have on someone else? Verse 19, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. And then Paul tells us that giving ourselves is a living sacrifice. It's a true and acceptable worship. And then back in Romans 12, verses 3 through 8, when we use this, we'll tie it up here. Paul tells us that this worship takes place in the context of the body of Christ, which is the church. Verse 3, for by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, just as Opal was sharing in the children's story, right? That was a wonderful lesson for us. We all have different functions. Verse 5, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is encouraging, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. True Christian maturity really has little to do with how long we've been a member of the church. It has everything to do with how we respond to the gospel of grace. Let me close with the words of Dr. Alan Sasser. He says, ever since I was a child, I've lived with the conviction that if I'm ever going to amount to anything, then it is only going to come through my own good works. So working 60 and 70 hours a week, ignoring my body's cries for exercise and relaxation, making excuses for not spending time with family, these became my way of amounting to something. Then I had a heart attack. And among other things, I'm learning from that experience the truth that I'm still here. Not because of anything I have done, but because of God's grace. God's grace gives us even late in the day opportunities to be recipients of the spontaneous, generous, lavish love. And it beats the stuffing out of any works righteousness you or I can earn on our own. Paul said it like this: forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what is ahead, so striving to be better, I press on towards the prize. The old spiritual translates it this way: I ain't what I ought to be, and I ain't what I'm going to be, but thank God I ain't what I used to be. Let's close our service. Listen, hymn number 316, Live Out Thy Life.